true business maverick, a visionary entrepreneur, and an inspirational force to be reckoned with. Tim Vieira, a name synonymous with entrepreneurship and innovation, has disrupted the concept of education with his chain of schools under the Brave Generation Academy brand. I met him in Portugal in the summer in Lisbon, where he showed me around his impressive classic car collection, where we talked about all matters to do with education, disruption, his background from South Africa, but also this man is running to be the next president of Portugal. So Tim Vieira founded Brave Generation Academy, a completely different way of teaching and experiences for students. And he explained a little bit more about this innovative project and the circumstances that created a need to finally disrupt the education system.
There's definitely, education is one of the biggest barriers for anyone to move around the world. And in Portugal, we talk about international schools, etc. There was certainly a high demand, very little supply. From my side, I think Brave Generation Academy, we're not an international school. What we've got is a different model of education that plugs in. There's 34 now in Portugal, from north to south, and then overall it's 52 BGAs. But it's done differently. It's not only internationals. We've got hubs in areas that maybe couldn't have a school anymore because they're small, they're little towns, but people want to go back and live there. So all of a sudden, if you've got a little hub with 30 kids, mixed ages, it opens it up again. So Portugal, it's a country that adapts quite easily to the world in terms of, we know that the world's speaking English and it's a big advantage, etc. So the demand is definitely there. And I think that's where we've fitted in. So we work on a concept of learning coaches, where we've got the IGCSEs and the A levels, and we've got Cambridge approved and Pearson's, and you've got all that. So you get that done in a way that's now different, with the coaches really motivating you.
Now, education is extremely traditional and has been for generations across the world. So to cause a disruption at grassroots level definitely couldn't have been easy. But at the same time, it must have come across as extremely highbrow, high concept. And that must have been very tough to try and get people to buy it.
So it is a lot more flexible. It takes time to understand this. My grandparents did traditional school, my parents, me, my kids were in traditional school. And it does take a bit of time to trust the system, but it's working, results are there. And the beginning, it was difficult to convince curriculum like Cambridge that this works, but as soon as they saw the first results, they came on board and made us a Cambridge school. The same thing with Pearson's and that, because it is difficult to break away from doing things the way it's done. For parents, it's great on the flexibility. We open from 8 till 6, and your kid normally needs to be there 4 to 5 hours. Right? And then we close 2 weeks in December, 1 week in Easter, and that's it. And other than that, it's always open. So you decide on your holidays. So that flexibility is great for the parents. But the best thing, I think, is, we focus on the learners and they just start to flourish. Although it's also not for everyone. We've learned a lot. We started 12-year-olds and we've learned that we've got to actually bring in books again. So we started bringing back the books until they got to their 14. And then books are no longer needed because they, use the platforms and work on that. So it's been, a bit of a learning curve, but overall, super excited with what we've managed to do.
Born in South Africa, studied administration of business. Tim is an investor who's helped many people either start or develop their business. So I was very curious to know how he started getting interested in business, what his major learnings were, and also how he dealt with failure on the way.
I've had multiple failures. Sometimes people go, Tim, you're like a successful entrepreneur. I think I'm actually a failure. I failed many more times than I've actually been successful. And I think that's something that we don't talk about often and all that, because we seem like to think that, success breeds success, but it's actually failure that breeds success, because you learn from it and you get prepared for, the next time you're in those situations, how you act, etc. I think all my failures actually prepared me for the business I'm in now. Okay. But I've had some big failures, when I was about 26, I married my wife, beautiful woman. She married this guy that was having a really successful business. And about a year and a half later, it was gone. So I had zero, except I still had her. Okay. And what I can say is that it was my mindset that got me through it. It really was. I think many times we wonder how some people make it through something and then, can rebuild themselves and get going. And it was really my mindset. My mindset's always been quite positive. But the most important thing is that my mindset is always to the future. And how can I just go forwards and not worry about the past? Even though that business didn't work, I still had a great reputation. A lot of people wanted to work with me. And I think that's how I got back up, quicker than maybe if I didn't have a network. So I think your network, the way you think, the way you acted, even on failure, says a lot about yourself. Like, you can go down in a honest and admirable way, or you can just run and, not so honorable. So I think, facing all that seriously, it got me through it. I think family got me through it. I think it's super important. Being honest with family got me through it. I think sometimes we, as maybe the breadwinner, you try not to say everything that's going on and you're still trying to say everything's okay. It's important to speak. It's important to have friends that you can speak to. It's important to get it out there, because stepping back from when things are really going wrong, it's like you sometimes get so clouded and so into that hole that you don't see a way out. There's a lot of stuff you learn from it, and we don't speak about it, or we don't tell people how to get through it, because it is a mixture of things, to get through it. But the one thing I can guarantee is when you do get through it, you're much stronger, you're much wiser, you're much more prepared for the future.
As a business owner whose business faced the enormous challenge of the COVID pandemic, I find that there's a lot of great learnings to be gained speaking to other business owners who went through such a challenge or other challenges through their business life cycle. And this one is Tim's story.
Period for me. I was building a building, 2 hotel projects going through. I was thinking of my education side of it. I'm very little geared in loans, but the problem was that we had pre-sold stuff and we weren't going to deliver on time because no one could build. And all of a sudden, there were clauses on people being able to exit. It's super tough. Again, you don't sleep at night and you wonder, why did I do it? Why did I get into that? You didn't think COVID would come, but still, why was I in that situation, etc. And the one thing I try to teach, and it wasn't easy because in the beginning I would have loved to have started with that curriculum, is life skills. It is just simple stuff like financial planning, communication, leadership, time management. And we couldn't do that because parents, they want what every school has, curriculum, British, international, this and that. But now we've actually introduced it this month. And we've started to bring it on board. And everyone says, oh, but that's so natural. But it's difficult, But why we're doing it is really to have, our learners prepared for tough times. There are tough times around the corner. There are tough times coming through. It never ends. We don't even know what's happening. It's how we get up, how resilient we are, how we persistent on and not being stupid. Everyone can handle success in a way, but failure is where it all goes wrong. And we're in a world now that, if you fail, everyone sort of can be, can even dig you deeper in it. And failure doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And you've got to look at these examples and say, wow, it's okay. We can still, it's not the end of the world. It's all about how your network was, how your mindset was, how do you believe? Because sometimes things will go wrong. Even when you've got everything planned and you've done everything right, then life happens and something, comes out and smashes you. So,
who's Tim Vieira when he's not innovating? And more importantly, how does Tim Vieira balance life and work? And what's his hack for that?
Every entrepreneur or CEO has got a personal life. And it's not just about the business side of it. Sometimes we're struggling in life, and sometimes making money makes them struggle in life. They all of a sudden now they need a new wife because they're a billionaire. Now they need a billionaire wife. Or they need new cars, and they get into cars, and then they get into this. You know, it's tough out there. You know, there's so many ways that you can lose your focus on. In the end, what you really want is happiness or joy, which maybe lasts longer than happiness. How do you get it? You know what I'm saying? And in the end, I've realized, and I'm grey-haired and so on, I've realized that it's actually quite simple. It's like spending less than you earn, and enjoying things that are for free, sunsets, walks with dogs, all those things that really make me happy. And enjoying a coffee in the morning like you can't believe. And you know, when I get that, I'm not looking forward to it. And those little things are amazing, you know. And then obviously, you know, it also gives you a lot of time for where it's important. And for me, I'm a busy person, and yet I get to spend maybe double the time most people do with their kids. You know, they travel with me, they come to meetings with me, they do a lot of stuff because I put effort into it. And you know what? That gives me joy because I see them and I know them, and it just drives me, you know. So I think it's like part of the way we think. It's always going to come back to that. And it's not about meditations and all this. It's actually about moving forward. It's actually about not blaming people. It's actually about forgiving. You know, it's actually about loving people, because if you don't love, you're never going to forgive. And sometimes forgive and do forget. Just get out of there, you know, and it's not a good thing. Close that hole. So it's a mix, but it starts up here, you know, and then obviously you've got to have a heart that moves on.
Life is really about letting go and moving on. Just keep on keeping on. Thank you, Tim, for closing on that beautiful note.